Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions, and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tayte in the hour, and today we're bringing you another Oscar review. This time we are going to be reviewing Room, directed by Lenny Abrahamson, starring Brie Larson and Jacob Tremblay. Not to get confused with, as I have on many occasions, with the monstrosity that is the Tommy Wiseau
What are you talking
film.
about? The Room is an amazing film.
Oh, it is? For all and just entirely the wrong reasons.
You're tearing me apart, Lisa!
But if you go to like a DVD store, or if those are even still a thing now, and you go in and say, can I have The Room, and you accidentally add that all-important "the" in the title, you're going to get a very different movie than this one. But anyway, we are not talking about The Room, not yet anyway. We may get to that in the future. Right now we're talking about the Oscar contender. So far it's been up for... It's been nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and the favourite to win is for Best Actress.
Lead actress, yeah.
And so far, you know, she's done everything in her path to get that Oscar. She's won the Golden Globe for it. She's won the BAFTA for it.
Critics
loads of other awards as well
like
for
that.
it.
She's almost as dead on as Leo is.
Yeah, pretty much. With Leo, I think it's more sort of stretched across the board. I think for actress, certainly with Brie Larson, it's pretty much a clear contender. Although
I
with
wouldn't
Leo,
say that. I'd say that there was only one other contender in the lead actress category.
This is true.
And that's Saoirse Ronan for Brooklyn. But not many people have seen Brooklyn, so yeah. Actually, do you know what? Saoirse Ronan did win a couple of awards for Brooklyn. Actress category. Some critics circles and stuff like that voted her over Brie Larson, so you never know.
Yeah, it's definitely up for it. I think that Brie Larson is probably the clear. I think she's
the favourite.
She's definitely the favourite, and I think sort of the emotional range that she goes to in this film may surpass Saoirse Ronan. They're very different performances, I think, so it's difficult to pick a winner out of the two.
Thank you for letting us do this interview. We're grateful to hear your story.
Thank you to everyone who sent their good thoughts and their prayers.
For 5 years, you made life in that small room, that prison, as nurturing and normal as you could.
Mom, I'm 5. You're 5.
So old now. You are so old now.
Yep.
Hey, do you know what we're gonna do today?
What?
We are going to bake a birthday cake.
You chose to tell Jack that room was the whole world, that there was nothing else.
Good morning, lamp. Good morning, plant. Good morning, sink.
I wanted him to feel safe and that it was a great place for him to live.
Did you ever think you would be free?
I hoped.
Hello, Jack.
Thanks for saving our little girl.
Are we in another planet?
Same one, just a different spot.
So I guess we'll talk about our thoughts before going in. For me personally, this was sort of just a blind viewing for me. I knew pretty much nothing about the plot. I hadn't seen any trailers previous to seeing this movie, so I just sort of went along to it, didn't know what to expect, and I was sort of surprised at sort of where the film went and the really sort of dark, twisted past it paints for the main character in this film, and how her situation, you know, what puts her in the room in the first place. And also I was kind of confused at the structure of it, because where I thought the film would end kind of takes place maybe halfway through the movie.
Yeah, same. I didn't see any of the trailers or anything, and even if you look at the synopsis on IMDb, it kind of tells you what happens, but like, I personally thought, oh, okay, the film has still got, oh, wow, okay, that's a long time left in the film, got it. So.
And even though it's in the synopsis, I would still kind of see that as a spoiler, because in all honesty, I thought the climax of the movie was going to be them, I guess this might be a spoiler, breaking out of the room. But anyway, this review will be spoiler-free for the most part, and then we'll let you know when we get to spoilers. I don't think there's all too much to talk about for spoilers, because there
isn't really too much to talk about spoiler-free as well, is there?
No, the main focus really on this is performances, as we said, with Brie Larson. So I guess if you want to know nothing about this movie, I would shut this review off now, because we are just going to give the plot synopsis, even though it is in the trailer. But if you did want to know nothing, you might want to shut this off and come back to it after you've seen it. So, Tayte, do you want to give a plot synopsis of this movie?
After 5-year-old Jack and his mother escape from the enclosed surroundings that Jack has known his entire life, the boy makes a thrilling discovery. And I'm not going to lie, but that isn't really what happens in the film.
No, it is. It's very sort of open-ended, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sort of makes a discovery. So I think we may as well just jump straight into the performances. So let's just take on Brie Larson at the start. Her character has a really, really dark, traumatic past in this film.
Has a very dark, dramatic time in the film.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so we're introduced to, I think she's called Joy. I'm just checking out. Yeah, Joy and her son Jack. They're in this small enclosed space. And what I thought this film did well was, because for the first half of the film we take place in this one exclusive location, I did get that sense of claustrophobia. I don't know if you did.
I think that's what the film was aiming for.
Yeah, and I think it did achieve that, in all honesty. It's very grey, it's very dark, there's not much light in it. And the camera does it sometimes sort of pan back a little bit to take in the whole space of the room, and it is exactly what it says. It's like a one-room shed, basically, ultimately, that they're in, and you do get that sense of you want to break out. And when Jack eventually does, and the camera does this trick really well where the light glares in the camera and it's sort of like his eyes adjusting to the light outside, you do get that sense as a viewer of sort of taking a breath of fresh air in as you break out with the character.
Because that's the first time we'd seen the outside in the film.
Yeah. And I thought how they'd sort of filmed it and the angles they chose and everything like that, very tight angles, sort of kept it on little bits. I thought that worked really well. But Brie Larson in this film is just fantastic. Like, we're introduced to her and she seems apparently normal. And when I was watching this movie, I didn't realise at the start that she'd been sort of kidnapped from a young age, put in there, raped and everything like that. I thought she'd just gone a bit crazy as a mother and was trying to keep her son in this pure state.
That's the kind of theme that you get from the start of the film until you get kind of introduced into what's his? Oh my god, I am blanking on names. Sean Bridges' character of Old Nick. Yeah, like you get the sense of feeling at the start that Brie Larson is kind of keeping their son in there because she gets to go off and stuff like that, and then you kind of twig onto it, and then it becomes really dark.
Oh yeah, and we'll talk about Old Nick in a minute. The next main character, or arguably the main character of the film, is Jacob Tremblay playing Jack Newsom. And
I have a lot of credit for the director having to deal with a 10-year-old. However, child actors, kid actors, they just don't do anything for me.
Yeah, same here, and there are times in this movie where he gets incredibly insufferable and annoying, and you kind of wish he wasn't in the movie. But then you sort of think about it, and what would a kid of that age be like who's been subjected to that environment for the rest of his life and then has to adjust to the wide world? I think it would be pretty much identical to what it's like, but it's in scenes where he's arguing with his mum and he keeps saying, like, why? And then she gives an explanation and he's like, why? It's moments like that where you do sort of just want to punch the little shit in the face, really. But he has got a lot of sort of credit for this film. I think he won an award of some kind. I'm just having a look here, see if I can find out what it was. He won a Critics' Choice Movie Award
and
for Best
Breakthrough
Young
Artist Award.
Yeah. So, I mean, for his performance, I've definitely seen a lot worse performances from child actors. And he's not entirely awful in this movie. It's just a few moments where it either gets sickly sweet or he just gets incredibly grating and irritating. Let's talk Old Nick. The only sort of guy in a film I can compare this guy is Stanley Tucci's performance in The Lovely Bones. Really immensely creepy, and the character himself is portrayed as very powerful, like when he comes into the shed at night and he's physically abusing Brie Larson's character, and Jack's sort of in the corner crying or has to keep silent. I did not know that the film was going to go in that direction, but and Brie Larson, I'm trying to remember how she tells her son about her past. I think it's just sort of matter-of-factly, isn't she? She tries to dress up. She says, like, I think when she was 17, Old Nick took her, put her in this shed, and that's where she's been for, I want to say, 7 years? 5?
Yes, I believe it is 7 years.
Yeah, because Jack's 5 in the film, but she's been in there before then, so yeah. I think she's been in there for 7 years, and there have been some negative comments on Brie Larson's performance where you don't get a good enough sense that this person has been in this one room for 7 years. She doesn't
look as emotionally distressed as she should be.
No, this was Carl Smith of the New York Post said that it just looks like she has a case of the SADS. And
do you know what? I can kind of agree with that.
Yeah,
I feel like her performance wasn't. I'd say when she was in the room, her performance wasn't emotional enough. Like, I was expecting her to be frightened every night that old Nick comes in and stuff like that, but it looked like she'd gotten used to it and she just took it as routine. And that's not something that happens.
I guess she
after 7 years, okay, even with like the kid in there, you'd still be like, oh no, because throughout the entire film it's all about, oh, she's been planning this escape for a long time and stuff like that. She probably would have been planning an escape for maybe, like, she'd probably been trying to escape since day one.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. And it makes me think that she was thinking the kid was going to be a blessing in disguise because it would help her escape. And she was and she actually did say at one point she's waiting for his age, for him to get smart enough.
Yeah.
So that's a bit, really?
Yeah, and she does say that she's tried to break out on a number of occasions, but she's never been successful. So I don't know if she got to the stage where she just sort of accepted her fate and thought, well, it's not happening. She even tells herself, like, old Nick takes care of us, he pays for all the power. And there's even a scene where she's nagging at him because I think he's been fired from his job and he's looking for a new job and he's saying that he can't pay for them and things like that. So it's moments like that where it does take you out of her situation a bit. I would say, especially considering the absolutely traumatic occasion of a kidnapping and just thrown in this one room. So there are moments like that. I think where her performance really shines, which we can't go into much detail after, it's after the halfway point in the film, I would say, where we start to see a lot more emotion from her and sort of dealing with everything that's going on.
The one thing that really got me from this film was the fact that she'd lied the whole time, telling her son, Jack, that like there was no outside world. Basically the entire world was in the room.
Yeah.
That really got to me, and I would say that it almost wasn't believable. I know that it's very easy to trick a kid, especially when that's the only world they've ever known, but it just didn't seem... And there was one point where she actually goes, you mean you're not smart enough to know that there's an outside and stuff like that? But...
Yeah, and he sort of gives a name to everything, doesn't he? And we sort of see this at another point in the film where he gives, I think there's like skylight and chair and everything like that. Every sort of aspect in the room is like an entity to the character of Jack.
You go insane because something which I have had a look up online is like schizophrenia. I used to do psychology, and I know that one of the things that does happen to some people who are schizophrenic is the first stage is you start naming things. You start naming inanimate objects, and then that basically graduates into they start speaking to you and voices in your head. And if you have no other world interactions other than one person, even as a kid and even as Brie Larson's character, you would go insane, and they just don't seem insane enough.
No, especially not after the time she's been in there. I mean, 7 years in one room, 2 years of which were pretty much solitary confinement. Yeah. Only when old Nick came in to do whatever he wanted to do, which is really fucking creepy. But yeah, so I do think her performance is great. Whether it be Oscar worthy, I'm not sure, but I think the Oscar worthy push comes in, as I said, like halfway through the film. So I guess we can sort of talk about positives and negatives now, and then get onto our recommendations. So do you want to kick off with any other positives or any other negatives that we haven't talked about already?
I'd say the positives of the films was the initial concept. I know it was a book, but I think it's quite fun to see it on screen. I wouldn't say fun, but I think it's quite a good idea to see it on screen, especially with a lot of these stories starting to come out nowadays. I mean, there was one case in America where these girls were locked in this house for 12 years. And like, I initially thought, oh, it's probably based off that, but no, it was an original book and everything. I'd say negatives were, I don't want to say it's too hyped, But I do want to say that performances do not accredit what they will earn.
Yeah, I can sort of see that. I'm trying to think of positives for me. I do think it is a good drama piece. I do. I don't think this is a bad movie by any
it
stretch
isn't
of
a
the
bad
imagination. I would say it's a very good movie. It would probably be a film that I would watch again at some point. Negatives for me is sort of what we've already said, where there are times where you don't get a sense of the dire situation that they're in, which may make the halfway point of the film not have as much weight to it. And I'm not sure whether having that moment take place midway through the movie is a good thing pacing-wise, because to me, after that point, the film does sort of slow to a crawl at some points.
When they do escape, she isn't in dire trouble.
No.
She's just tired of the same old situation, and I would have wanted to see something more desperate. Like, it's okay, we got to get out, otherwise we're both going to die kind of thing.
Yeah. And Brie Larson's character does sort of change at that midway point, and at some points does become really unlikable. Even it's difficult to... You sort of empathise with her in which situation she's in. I mean, she's adjusting for herself and trying to be a mother, but she does get very sort of bitchy in how she talks to her own mother, and distance herself away from the kids. So it's moments like that where you're not completely on board with the character. So my negative would be that there are moments in the film where you don't get a good enough sense of desperation, as you said, in the characters.
No, and I feel like the desperation is kind of not there when she's actually in the room, but without really spoiling anything, it is there when she does leave the room.
Yeah. And I'd see some people will probably read into that and say that that's the point of the film, but to me, if you put yourself in this situation, and it's impossible not to, like when you watch the movie, I think they would be a lot more desperate. Positives, it's, as I said, it's a good drama piece. I do think at the end that the performances do come together, and when you sort of look at it as a whole, it does work. But the hype machine is there, being the Oscars, and I'm not sure if it completely warrants that. It's doing pretty well critically. I'm just having a look here. It's got a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 208 reviews. So, you know, there must be something there that people have gravitated towards, whether they're just curious or whatnot. So I guess we come on to the question, would you recommend Room to anyone who hasn't seen it?
It's difficult because I personally... I thought it was a good film, but to be honest, I wouldn't see it again. I don't think it warranted any kind of emotions in me to see it again. Which is sad, because it could have been a better film if certain parts of the film were slightly better. But if you're watching all the films for Oscar season, you kind of have to see it. If not, then I wouldn't bother.
See, I would recommend this movie. If you've read the book, I guess, if you're a fan of Brie Larson in it, or if you just follow the Oscars, it's definitely one to watch. But for casual viewers, I think it's just if you're a fan of drama. And I do think there are aspects of this film that do play out like a thriller, especially the bit where they escape is really quite intense to watch, and I love how that plays out, and how Lenny Abrahamson was able to build tension throughout that.
I just want to say something here.
Yeah.
All critics are at 96%, and top critics are at 87%. Brooklyn, 98 and 100.
Wow. Go see Brooklyn.
Go see Brooklyn.
See, it's difficult because you can't really compare this film to a Brooklyn, because they are very, very different.
You kind of have to for leading actresses, because this is the main category that both Room and Brooklyn are banking on.
Yeah.
Brooklyn maybe has screenplay as well. I'm not sure whether they do a best not foreign film, but like, I mean, it won best British film, but I don't know. I wanted to win something.
Yeah, me too. And it did get a lot of notification at the BAFTAs, which was nice. Brooklyn, so we'll see how it goes. Right, let's get on to spoilers then. So let's talk about the escape scene.
The escape scene I thought was done reasonably well. I think I'm not sure. Old Nick would have been smarter than that to check the blanket.
Yeah, and that's sort of my only
That's the one
criticism
loophole of that scene.
Yeah.
Everything else about the scene is done perfectly. I actually believe her reaction that she actually is pretending for him to be dead. That's how anyone else would react. and stuff like that. Like, but
and you do see a desperation in that scene where
yes.
she's pretending that Jack's sick, and she's like making herself vomit like all over the pillow to make it look like Jack's done it. And does she burn him somehow? I'm trying to remember how she makes it sound like he's got a fever.
I think she
burns him somehow to make his skin all red and just burn up. So it's that complete desperation. But before then, I will agree, old Nick was sort of portrayed as very meticulous. He knew, well, clearly all the other times he's foiled her escape plans, so he knows when he's being tricked, and he sort of falls right for it even at the start. And when he's just got a bit of a fever, and then the next day she says he's dead, wrapped up in the carpet, and she won't let him check the body, and he just goes along with it.
But the thing is, though, as soon as you get outside, you check the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something that you just do.
And you can see the doubt in his face. I think it's when he's driving the truck and he hears like a little scuffle in the back. He sort of stops, looks in the mirror. At that moment, like, I guess you would pull over and check, or immediately, as you just said. So I think that bit does take away a lot of the tension, because it makes old Nick a bit stupid, because before then he'd been proven that he was very sort of knowledgeable of all these tricks that she'd try. But the actual escape itself I thought was great, and I was really shocked to see it at that placement in the movie. I was expecting that to come towards the end and be sort of the big finale of the film when they break out and he calls back. And I liked it because I thought, when I was watching the film, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a short film. When I was watching it, I didn't realise you'd get the whole fallout. But there were moments where I thought, Nick is going to kill Brie Larson's character in this. Like, this is going to be a story where only the kid survives. She sacrifices herself to get the kid out there. So you do get that sense of dread and desperation when the police do find Jack, and he's sort of cryptically trying to tell them where the mum was. And I thought that was brilliant as well, how the police officer sort of Sherlocks her way back to where the mother would be kept. It is surprising, though, why old Nick didn't go back and kill Brie Larson after she tricked him with that.
He probably thought, I've got to get as far away from here as possible.
Yeah, perhaps. So the second film, the second part of the film, really, just deals with the fallout of it, and both Joy and Jack adjusting to civilian life, the outside world. We see them in hospital, and then they go back to Joy's old parents' house. They haven't seen her in 7 years, so it's also them coping with seeing their daughter.
There were only two scenes in the second half of the film that I like, and that's the interview scene. Yeah,
I wanted to bring that too.
And I'd say probably the end scene. Yeah, maybe the suicide attempt, but like at that point, you it's just like, oh, you I don't know. Her acting performance from that, like from previous parts of the film, didn't make it believable. Therefore, when it did come to the suicide scene, it was suddenly, oh, look, I'm trying to be believable here. And you're just thinking, well, I just don't believe you.
I'm trying to go to what her mindset would be. So, I mean, she's adjusting herself. She hasn't seen her parents in 7 years since she was a teenager. So I'm not sure when she sort of gets really petulant and back-talky if it's her regressing to the age she was before she got kidnapped, when she was around her parents.
I think at that point, the reason why she wants to attempt suicide is because she sees old Nick's been arrested. He's basically been the only contact she's had in the last 7 years. And that might come down to Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah. I think that's definitely
the only thing that I can think of for a reason for her to be depressed and upset.
And I think it's just because the press and everything like that, and we'll talk about the interview scene in a minute, because that was my favourite moment of the film as well. She's being questioned as to whether she's a good mother. Like, for these 5 years that she's raised Jack, has it been in his best interests or hers? And that's my favourite line in the movie, where the press promised to go easy on her, but they're sort of they're pushing her into a corner. She's on the ropes with the questions, and it comes down to that question, and she's trying to blindly justify it, but you can see that conflict in her head where she's making up this story as to how it was for his interest, when in fact it probably was hers.
Yeah.
But you have to put yourself in that situation as well. I mean, if she was in there for 7 years, this obviously maternal instinct kicks in, but it's another point of contact it's someone else to talk to, it's someone else to interact with. So I think that was a big part of it. And then obviously she has the suicide attempt, and this to me was where the film started to just crawl a bit. Like the whole dealing with it afterwards sort of slowed down. We could talk about some other cast members though in this bit. We have I think it's Joan Allen. I thought she was fantastic. She was in the Bourne films. She was a really nice character, and she ultimately becomes a mother figure to Jack when he's going through his adjustment period. William H. Macy is in the film. He plays Joy's dad, and he just can't accept Jack as his grandson.
No.
Because obviously the situation that arose that ultimately birthed him, and you do get behind him and see his thoughts and why he would think that, but it's really the grandma's new boyfriend that becomes that father figure to him, or grandfather figure, I guess, and sort of helps him adjust while Joy's going through this period of depression. So let's talk about the ending, if you want to talk about that for a bit. So when they decide to go back to room, because I think they need that closure in their lives.
So basically they both decided, okay, we're going to go get some closure, we're going to go see it one last time, just because it's plaguing us so hard, and we need to see it one more time just to make sure that we don't want to be there in our heads. Which I think is agreeable, seeing as one of them's been in there for 5 years, one of them's been in there for 7. It's a big part of their life, almost half of their life, that has been taken out of it. So they want to just kind of go over there, get some closure. And her reaction is she doesn't want to be there at all. She really doesn't. But Jack, for some strange reason, does, because that's his whole life, basically. All of his life has been in there, and he doesn't understand the idea of closure, so he just says goodbye to everything. Every single anthropomorphic thing that he's done, like everything that he's given a name to, just goodbye.
Yeah, and I think it does work as an ending, and ultimately it does end on a little bit of a bittersweet ending, because you know that these two characters have got a hell of a lot more of adjustment to go through.
Yeah.
They're never going to entirely recover from the events that have happened to them. So it's a very sort of open-ended, uneasy ending for them as they carry on this journey.
With films, I love bittersweet endings, but this one just didn't hit with me.
No, and I'm trying to think of why that probably was.
I have a feeling that it was probably because earlier on in the film, it could have hit hard, and they could have had some kind of attachment to the room before leaving it. Maybe anything sentimental that was in room that they'd forgotten, or anything that they had to go back for. And there was nothing. There was absolutely zero reason for them to go back, and that's why it didn't work with me.
Do you think that it was because the first half of this movie was perhaps a little bit too tame?
Yes. There was...
Yeah.
I'd say that what we saw, nothing was too shocking.
Yeah.
Nothing was over the top. And, I mean, it was given an R rating in the US. I'm probably thinking it was probably given either a 12A or a 15 in UK.
Yeah.
But to be honest, UK, it probably could have pushed 15, maybe 18, if it really wanted to go there. And that probably would have made it, maybe, put it up in a higher acting category, maybe put it right up there for best film.
Yeah, I guess if we're going to give it a recommendation now, I think that ultimately where it fails is creating that sense of desperation in the introduction. I think
it is up for best film, but I don't think it'll get anywhere near it.
No, same here. I think this is just purely based on performance for this one. I think maybe if it had had a bit more clout in the opening act, then that would have given us a sense of dread that the characters are in. And we do get that dread, but it is very tame, as I said. I think that if this film had a bit more balls, if it had just gone for it and just showed us this horrific situation that these characters are in, I think that would have set up nicely for the second act and maybe made us feel a bit more in the ending. That being said, I don't think it's a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. I think it still does what it needs to do very well, and the second act does show some great performances, especially from Brie Larson, and I'm going to say Joan Allen as well. I thought she was brilliant.
Yeah. I'm looking at the the lead actress category here. We've got Cate Blanchett, who personally shouldn't be in that category. We've got Jennifer Lawrence with a solid performance, probably on par with Brie Larson. We've got Charlotte Rampling. I haven't seen 45 Years yet. And then we got Saoirse Ronan, who I'd say it was slightly better than all of the rest of them. I'm not being biased to Brooklyn here, but as far as performances went and as far as how hard they hit us or how well we felt like it was acted, I would personally say that Brie Larson was third, maybe fourth in running here.
I think what might be pushing us over for Saoirse Ronan is because Brooklyn is a personal film,
yes,
and we practically follow her single solitary character all the way through as she goes through all the different emotions of moving away and everything like that.
And very similar to Joy, but I'd say in Carol it was more of a split emotion, and personally the best lead actress performance of the year was Rooney Mara.
Yeah.
Not Cate Blanchett. That was the best lead actress, remember. Probably better than Saoirse Ronan's as well, Rooney Mara's, but however, she's been nominated in the wrong category.
So maybe it's a case of, whereas in Room, the lead sort of performances are shared between Brie Larson and Jacob Tremblay, and there are portions of the film where you exclusively follow Jacob. So I don't know if it comes down to that. I'm not really sure.
It's a very weird argument, especially with the Oscars this year, because I've heard a lot of people say Leonardo DiCaprio, anyone could have really played that role. And I have to admit, people probably could have played that role, but it probably wouldn't have been done as well. Whilst roles such as Eddie Redmayne, I can't think of anyone in the acting business who could have done that role. However, the film was way too cheesy for it to garnish lead actors win. And other than that, you've got Bryan Cranston, whose performance was very good, but I would say underwhelming. And then you've got Michael Fassbender, who
I thought he was probably the
brilliant,
best one.
Probably the best one, but in this year, the best performance probably won't win on multiple different categories. That is a shame, but in the end, it's down to not only popular vote between the people of the Academy, but also how popular your film is.
Yeah.
And I'd say that Room is probably more popular than Brooklyn, and Revenant is probably more popular than Steve Jobs. So.
Yeah, and sadly that's all what it comes down to. I mean, if I'm going to go on a tangent here, just talk about DiCaprio's performance for a little bit before we close out. If he does win the Oscar, I see that more as a congratulations for all your other roles as well that you should have been nominated for. I don't think he was good in Revenant, but I don't think that his performance
wasn't his
in
best
that warranted an
performance.
Oscar. No, definitely, and I think there are a lot of performances he's done in the past that did deserve the Oscar. So if he does,
I'd say
win
Wolf of
it,
Wall
I'll be
Street,
happy.
to be honest. But
yeah, if he does win it, I'll be happy for him, but mostly for all the chances he should have been given at that shot previously, rather than his actual performance from The Revenant. But anyway, so the Oscars aren't all too far away. They go live on the 28th into the 29th for us, because we're in the UK, and we will be doing our live stream of that. It will be me, you, George, and possibly Tom will be joining us as well. So spread the word.
And hopefully all of you guys.
Yeah, definitely. We should have a poster up some days soon, because we're about 10 days away from it actually being released. So we should have a poster up with date and times when you can see the live stream. That will be going up on YouTube. For looking up dates and times like that, just check our Facebook and Twitter pages, which are all in the description below. So yeah, that will do it for our review for Room. So let us know what you thought of it. Get some comments going. Please hit subscribe. We'll be bringing you loads more reviews, not just of the Oscar films in the lead up to Oscar season, but we will be going into the main big hitters coming out. We just had our Deadpool review go up, and next month we're obviously going to have Batman v Superman and things like that as the channel moves forward into the future. So yeah, that'll do it. I'm not exactly sure what our next review is. It'll probably be Bridge of Spies. We've got the last few Oscar ones to get through, so we'll probably be kicking off with that one. So yeah, that'll do it for today. So until next time, thanks for listening.